Congratulations, guys. Welcome to the VR sets and correlation lines of track interference to really start to recognize what's going on in line communications. Also, too, for the upgrades for the team, it's amazing where we're coming to correlates and setting and travels. Now we have to really understand how to navigate. And the only way to navigate is learning how to process communications on platforms, how to walk the grounds in space. Everything's in space. There's not one thing. This is not the grounds. I'm stepping on this, not grounds, right? I'm talking about the grounds up here, right? Everything processes in the mind. That's the calculation where it comes to nothingness, awareness of conscious location to its self-identity, to its modulation screen, to space modules, correlation interactions, high center interference, and position programs. Now, getting the communication system is truly understand how this all works in the VR sets. It's in position locations and calculations, all right? So everybody's in the gates of heaven. Imagine that, golden gates, golden arches, golden realms, golden galaxies. Now, it starts off in a 50-generation screen lines, adaptation line, calculation screen lines, high center interference, putting all position of programs and direct location signals. The calculation to the avatar is now in modification line. It's going off in its own line, screen lines, high center interference, but it's still tethered to the body communication screen lines in and out an audio line screen. In that position of the correlation setting is track lines, but the body has to defend itself now. Now, understand that correlation system, it has to identify that it's in a vessel. Let me say that again. It has to identify it's in a vessel. The body itself. So that position of travel lines puts everything in core centers. That puts all calculus setting how you get into the position of the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres. You're going to learn scenario location setting of platforms 1, 2, and 3. That puts position lines of track locations in the settings. Now, the modification lines is a box line, triangulation line in its setting. That position of the male side and the female side correlation and attractions. Setting lines of triangulation of box is a core track interference and provision lines of cycle communication setting, positional levels of female cycles and male. Setting that communication setting is all about understanding how to direct and redirect communication to its payloads and track location to its provision. Setting lines of high center interference puts all communication to its platforms. All right, so we have to really understand the position of travel lines, screen lines, adaptations of service. Now, let's start off with the basic ground centers, okay? Because inline communication setting, the species are now in angelic school. Their position travel line is line communication higher self. Higher self track locations, let's go on ground centers. Equals lines, line communication setting equals lines of Earth, equals lines of 24. Sets lines of communications, right? Higher self track lines, 1 ground centers. That opens all signals, line communicates to a system of platform, right? Higher self communicates a line screen, adaptation lines, server communicates setting to a location grid. That communicates lines, cross line screen, location, habitation. Direct lines, modification line cycles, high generates the screen lines, a high center interference, high positionments, programs, applications. Direct modifications of platforms 1, 2, and 3, and 4 interactions. Direct lines, high center interference in line, calculation setting of 4 line rotations, direct location of line setting into the avatar line sequence. Positions of platforms, communication setting of travel. Points, lines of graph, communication lines of the sun, and position location of the moon of flux location. Direct calculation of line screens, high center interference in position of 2 tractions. Line signal over cross location. Direct lines modifications into the center core system of the avatar. All right. So body tractions in high correlation lines is 2 panels and line rotation. Sets lines of 3 rotation surface interactions. Equals line correlation. That's where you can use the film strips and line connection setting to its position of its program in its VR setting. Rotation line cycles, high correlation setting, equal lines of coordinate interference, high position of program, 1 set line communication line position of process, coordinate track lines, high center location system of center core system at travel calculations. Now, directed lines of communication setting equals lines of coordinate interference, line position north, east, and west, and south. Data process line communication position of diamond core and track locations equals lines of 24, 24 line signals, 24 line connection settings, 24 lines of north, 24 lines of east, west, and south in set locations. Blocking system and diamond core shift lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of service. Work about position of travel lines, point lines of torical fields, line rotation surface, and track location lines of operation line connection setting into the angelic realms and track location. Boom. That's my equation. All right. Everybody's in the VR sets of all communications. All right. So it's the golden gates. Now, the center core system has to understand the higher self. The track location line connection setting is understanding how to use the wings. The wing lines is communication of position lines of box, triangulation, triangulation box. Male cycles is the box triangulation. That's 43 track locations. That's 4 line division into 3 centers. That's 3 communication lines at high calculation setting. That's position of past, present, and future. And the same thing with all communication line center location of female cycles, triangulation box, right? That position lines at correlation setting is a 43 track location. The line connects to its position locations. Now, in that habitation zone, the track location of film stretch sets lines, communication lines, screen lines, adaptation lines, server send to the VR line rotation surface. Puts everything in position of process. All right, so communicates center interference, higher self, calculation lines center with angelic realms. Now, the angelic realms, communication setting, comes into its real. Okay, REEL, not REAL. Okay, you guys are in the VR sets now. Routers and routers, line connections, levels, and projections over screen. Polyscope communication lines, a kilo mic and track location. Direct calculation lines, ground lines, sequence, line connections, VR system in a 3-split anomaly. 2 patterns lines in a film strip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 location settings. Travel lines in film strips, crosses line screen, high correlation setting, opens all signals into position of travels. Points lines of graph, setting lines and position locations in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and position of 8 set location of travel. Directs lines of calculation line center at hand and more rotation cycles, generates screen lines into a flywheel that opens all signals and modification screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, track location system, and all calculation line rotations in one center operation line surface and track location line connects to position of operation. Done by equation. All right. So the higher self has to recognize correlation settings: high school, college, and university. Okay, so we got high school, college, and university. Unifications, compute system, higher self calculations. All right. All right, so we take that line screen and direct lines of signals, spacing line communication center interference, 24 lines of communication lines, 15 line wires, direct lines of 14 line tractions and 13 line divisions and 12 centers, puts position lines at a 24 cycle, 24 line connection setting, 24 surface, and a 24 grounds lines of south wind sector. Position of process, position lines of 12 line cycles, platforms of 13 track location, 24 lines of 1, 24 lines equals lines of 15, in position of 2 4-line correlation settings of 24, 24 track location. Direct modification lines, symbols, and 1 traction. All right. Direct modification lines, cycle line communication setting, position of programs, 3 line split lines of 4 track location and provision. Calculation line, cross line screens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, split lines of anomaly and track locations, right? Direct lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Set 10 lines of high center equals lines of X line position of 1, 1 track location lines equals lines of 12. 12 center correlation setting, set lines of 12 setting, 12 line center locations 34. 34 lines of 2 track location line settings, 12 line cycles, 9 generation screen lines, 36,000 line screen lines, adaptation lines of 15 line perimeters and line conditions of pi, and routers and communication lines of square root and track location line conditions high position to its VR set and track location. Done by equation, right? Schematics are set up line communications in progress that process the communication lines of ground lines, power lines, atmosphere lines, and space line. Directs calculation modification screen line. Now it's going to get complicated now because we're in the VR sets. Starting communication settings, we understand how to formulate. Let's get position lines of 3 tractions, 3 correlation lines. Okay, let's start with these tractions. Let's start with this location. Okay, now getting position location is longitude, latitude, elongated, line connection, high center position, right? Growing sequence lines is the split lines of anomaly in 2 track locations, right? Direct lines modifications and line communication is line settings of a tether and communication to its position. Okay. Coming into lines of high center interference into source resource correlation setting, how calculates how you surf line communication to VR settings. It starts correlation setting a particle, subtronical line communication subparticle, line communication magnetic high communication particle, direct lines modification lines of atom particle, communication particle, line communication particle, direct lines particle, computer particle, direct line communication interference particle, particle line screen, particle line interference, particle line communication electrical line grid, particle line communication interference and travel. Setting position location is understanding the connections of growth, the condition of split anomaly, and position location of recycle. Okay, ground center systematic lines I'm remembering. Okay, position of process is not Mother Nature, how it corresponds lines of the earth, line track location to its setting, right? Ground centers of growth, separation, and position all levels recycle, right? So recycle lines of Fibonacci line screen, split time and alarming line condition setting in waving lines of panels, flux, sets communication ground lines of growing and center communications in line conditions of data and process of highways. So that's how it's set up in lines of communication, how to use your data, process, correlation setting. But you got to understand your correlation center interference. Each lines equals lines of applications of flying, traffication of ground lines, high center interference of walking, and traffication lines of levitation ground communication. So you have to really understand how it works through growing, separating, and recycling. Okay, that's what Earth is. That's your Earth is a traffication setting. So it's like putting soil. It's all about in position locations in vitamins, supplements, or any locations of water in a plant. So I just want you guys to understand these things. So now, do an experiment in screen lines, adaptation line, screen location setting, puts love and communication in one. Label communications, right? So you see the plant grow in traction, right? Plant is growing, okay? It's growing in traction, right? Now, indirect application lines have a high calculation line position of travel, lines of Kate. Sets communication lines of travel, right? And you have the third one, that position location line conditions of ignore that communicate through its cycle. So the Earth line rotates the surface and track location line setting the highest locations of 3 lines of tether and track location. Direct calculation modification lines is split lines of anomaly. Okay, that's separation, right? That splits lines of communication lines of tri-screens. Now the communication lines highest interference is the ignore, which is the recycle in line communication setting. That's how mother works in the all calculation nature. Calculation line send locations, right? So growing, splitting anomaly, and recycle. Okay, these are the 3 track locations. So do an experiment on this, right? Get a glass of water or get communications of plants or whatever. Label it, put labels on it. Love, hate, and ignore. You will see the difference of growth in communications. You see the growth of love. You see the separation in position. And you'll see the recycling in position of ignore in track location. All right, done by equation. All right, so directing modification is the VR setting. You have to really understand how to become friends with everything in set locations. Ground centers, lines, core set and align communication setting. Ground center, high center location to center communication. Now, in their location has an energetic bubble that core-lines of platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings. Sets position lines of travels and line communication to its setting. Operation cycles, lines of correlation setting, position of 5 set location of travel. Points lines the graph, sun comes in, moon comes in, waiting on signal, and positional platform. In that communication setting, you start here interactions. Now, I want you guys to really understand how this all works in the VR set location to its setting, right? So you start here. You do not start here, okay? And so the inner cycle, remember I was telling you about exactly, you never look directly at something, you look beyond this position locations. You're not seeing the computer, you're seeing the dimensional wall, right? So you're always in that position location. So understanding system location, going this way, okay? Going this way, no. Coming this way is the inner. It's the inner and outer coming together, right? So once you understand the spectrum line, the core, the center line, position, the ovals, opens up the frequency line, screen, high interference, of portals, communication line, set a high calculation setting, position of its program. That process communication ground lines has a magnetic highway information line cycle that puts your data processing communication lines of your navigation system in travel. Points lines of graph of 1, 2, and 3 travel. Ground centers, calculations of power generations and communication lines at all levels. Magnetic high line center, high line communication setting, position of provocation setting, operation lines of certification system, and travel calculation line condition setting. Position of process is really understand how this all works in position location of growth. Okay? Growth, separation, recycle. Okay? That's how the VR works, right? So put love, hate, and ignore, all right? Through anything in that communication, go through that experiment and you'll see the directions. Now, once we get into modification lines for high interference location and calculation modification settings, then we come into the cells. All right, so it goes to the line dividers. Remember, you guys are in the VR. All right, so it's all frequency lines of screens, application setting, location of your system. Those are the cells, right? All right. Cells equals lines of correlation lines of one atom, one rotation surface. One atom line rotation cycles correlates to track location line condition, high center interference. Position of process, cells, lines, triangulation lines, communication lines, cell interference are position of its program. Direct calculus lines of pi generation screens. Calculate line interference of sonar and track locations. Direct lines of pi, correlation lines of clocking. direct calculates lines of high center interference of position, direct modification lines of collecting line communication, direct lines of course and sending ground calculations. Okay. Flywheel attractions, direct lines of signals, modificates the ground centers, and tractification of center. Process communication lines of an energy line screen, opens all signals and modification screen. Position of process, now we go on to correlation lines, calculation setting, go into the red. Remember correlation center interference. Team has to get used to that now. You have to get into coloration now, okay? And understand all levels of formation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and track location. Okay, we go through the red, and then we go through the blue, okay? Remember, you got to go through blue, and you got to go through red, and you got to go through all levels of white, which is a cloak and dagger and track location line, visual lines, the cycle generation, screen lines, high center interference, high distance program locations, any track location. All right? Then we go into the cloak and dagger. Let's outline the cycles, coordinate the track interference, outline high correlation setting into set locations. It puts everything in theta communication screen lines, adaptation lines, location setting, the trial point graph, communication with system, and trial calculations. All right? It's very powerful when you start recognizing everything in the VR line rotations. Center correlation system, trial calculation line settings. Now, my hands are basically 5-point line screens, right? 4 track provisions, 1 cycle. 4 track provisions, 1 cycle. 4 track provisions, 1 cycle, okay? Setting communication, what am I doing with my thumb? I'm indicating lines of high correlation setting track lines. So split lines of anomaly, line conditions of growth, and 1 center. Position of 2 factors, 3 tractions, and 4 pi. Set position of 5 generation screen lines adaptations into 1 course and 1 position of 2 VR centers in travel. Now, it gets more complicated because now you have to understand how to direct and redirect your system into the VR settings. Okay, so you have to really formulate that in positional growth, separation, and recycle. So know exactly what you're saying in the VR. Okay, that's how it works in Mother Nature, that's how it works in powers, and that's how it works in your atmospheres. All right, so once you get into that, the applied division gets a lot more easier to track locations. Direct lines of grounds, set lines of communication lines. Let's go through green line screens. This is the major correlation setting inventory, track location, and provision lines of cycles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's go through 10 track location. Direct lines of modification, right? 10 line settings, right? Now we're going to cross line symbols in position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 to 12 set locations, all right? Cross line signals. So getting that position, oh, look at that. See that? You see that? Isn't that wild? Isn't that amazing? When I just touched location setting, recognition of time sequence, line communication line, 0 gravity line communication setting, 0s and lines, and 1, 0 location setting. 7 parameters, line calculation setting, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Set location of 0, 1, platitudes, lines of 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0 line position, triangulation line, condition box location line setting, flux communication lines of high center interference, high position program location, and 3 track location provisions, and cycle line communication setting to travel. Okay? So getting that position location, you change the 0s and 1 attractions and platforms and frequencies. It communicates the screen lines, adaptation lines, so locates setting to travel. Okay, so when I'm adding down a line, so locates and setting, right? Sets communication lines of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Let's go location setting to travel. Inventory ground lines, course and track positions. Let's go through 1, 1, 1. 4 track locations of portal line descending high interference. Each line 0, 1 has to be in position of frequency lines of screen location adaptation. Filling screen lines, adaptation lines of service. Location setting, matrix core lines, certifications. Inventory lines, ground lines, surface, and track location provisions of cycle track location. All right, position lines of 0s. Communication lines of 1 ground, center location setting, inventory communication setting lines surface. Encryptions and direct line signals, modification line screen, high center locations, and grounds, powers, and amplification modems. Wi-Fi, line condition setting, in high track location setting, and travel position point graphs. That's my equation. Okay? Now each number is going to signify, it's going to change its core setting. Right? It's changing its directions. It's changing its number sequence. It's changing the information. It's changing the inventory screen. It's changing its graphical line screen, and line communicates to its position of its program. Okay? It's amazing once you understand how to go through the waving line screen in your position lines of travel. It opens up all signals and modification in your screen location and habitation. Right? Now, again, see the face? Face recognition. Always the face. All right? So the test is based on everything you already know, But you have to understand the facial recognition of where you're going and track line connected to its position, understand the walking sequence, understanding the flying mechanisms, understanding the levitation graph correlations of zeros and ones and track location setting to the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres of Earth line rotation surface, and track calculation line setting location system of growth, separation, and recycle. Okay? All right, so it's a lot going on, eh? Just in this line communication. All right, so I'm just trying to get you guys in the basic ground lines, how it works with zeros and ones. Now, once we get in that communication line in line rotation, surface location, setting, position, track, coordinate line, calculate side position, operation line, surface. Then we come into this position location. So we start with the zeros and ones, equals lines, correlation lines. We go into pixelation. Okay, pixel. Start location lines. 0, 1 equals pixel, right? Pixel lines, correlation line, interference, and track location line can set position as program. Pixelation, hologram. Says communication lines, set lines, and travel communication programs, right? 0, 1, pixelation, hologram, right? Communication lines, plasma. Puts position travel lines and the correlation setting travels and point graph communications, right? After plasma, you come into plasmesium and track location line conditions of all centers and track location. Okay? So you start with 0, 1, pixelation graphs, hologram communications into plasma generation, right? Center core system is really understand how to see the VR sets in all ways and forms, right? So wherever you're walking in the VR sets, this is what you see through all lines. You see the zeros and ones. So this is how it works. Let's see structures line, division line, interference, but you have to really understand how to use the mechanism lines in position of grounds, powers, and atmospheres. How to service lines of VR. They become your friend, relationship, partnership, position, travel lines. Understanding the growth, understanding the correlation setting in position of separation, or anything split lines of anomaly, or anything in trifactor correlation in track calculation setting, right? Love, hate, and ignore. Okay? Growth, separation, recycle. And that's what you get information. 3 triangulation split lines, anomaly line, rotation surface. That's position, location, security line, division lines. Platforms 1, 2, and 3 track location. Setting correlation lines is center line, rotation surface, and track location line setting, high position of calculation. Right? That changes everything through the platforms of growth, calculation line, condition setting and separation, and position of recycle. Sets communication line, screen high interference of the sun and the moon, and the same cycle line communicates the setting of its program in line condition setting. The operation line cycles and high location of its ground line opens all signals and line communicates the setting of tither. Process communication lines, let's come into the blue. Blue line cycles the generation screen, position lines of grounds, powers, and that location system. So you guys have to really understand how the VR is set up in the track locations. Starting off from line communication in black, which is your space, you already know that communication line side location system. So every time you're going through 12 steps, you're going through growth, you're going through separation, and you're going through recycle, all through a 12-step in line connection to its portal in a VR setting. So you have to be very important what you're doing with your thought lines and where it's coordinating through in this VR system, and all through travels in calculation navigation, all right? Process communication lines of ground, high center interference, high position of platforms. Let's go into 4 track location provision. Center core line interference sets position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Set calculation lines of travel, right? Then we go in line center location into all levels. Cloak and dagger 1 cycle, cloak and dagger line cycles, cloak and dagger line rotation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and track locations. Tracks modifications. Line screens, high set location lines, in track provisions, high center interference. This is coming out. This is coming out. This is coming out. Right? Set communication ground. Out. This comes out. And this comes out. 3 communications, flying direct line signals, back in traction. Set position travel. Point graph calculations. All right. So in that line connection setting, once you understand more levels of view, you understand the core track location of your system and travel, points, lines, and graph communications into the VR setting of VR sets, okay? How to see structure of design line. Now, to understand the structure communication system, remember the communication lines of its leaf, right? It's the bandwidth now. It's the longitude and latitude. So course channels and communication graph calculation lines, remember in position locations going through the portal, right? Illumination graph lines. You always stay in the center. You never leave. But your mind is adapting to higher lines, a high correlation setting to its consciousness. reaching line conditions at all levels. It puts everything out of reference and communicates to its position, and all levels are track location lines. So let's go into the VR line, rotation surface. Let's go through flux capacitor, one screen, one adaptation, one surface, right? Sets correlation. Let's go through two panels and correlation lines attractions. Line signals, line cross location, and setting, right? So we got the sun in position, and we got the moon in track locations. Line setting, high calculation. Direct calculation lines, cross line signals, high set locations, in track location of pi, okay? So it's all about understanding how the VR is set up in a position to its atom line condition setting or program. Everything is a hologram in the VR line rotation surface interactions. So everything has a line communication setting to all levels of communications to understand how to use it through growth, its separation, and its recycling and track location. Hologram. Okay, two panels. Let's go on the center core system. Let's change that communication. Let's open all signals. All right, so ground centers, two panels. There's the structure inside the building. Okay, so this doesn't leave. Mass, direct, and redirect. Okay, direct, redirect. Okay, direct, redirect. Okay, so that's a structure of the building into the VR system. Right. So once you go faster and faster, it's much easier to see the structures, lines of communications, and what you create in line calculation setting position of its program. Then you see you really come in, right? And then again, you have to add the blue. You can have blue, you add red, doesn't matter, but where it is in track locations, you have to know exactly what's going on through its growth, through its separation, and its settings, and its at location of recycle. All right, so it just comes out more and more. Digital layer, digital layer, digital layer, layers, 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 layers. Then you go into the red line cycles and track location line setting and all levels of high correlation setting position. Then you get into position of the white, and this gets really interesting. Cross line signals, high location system into the avatar line connections with the position. Now it's coming out, right? But stays in position of panel. All inside is moving. So if you understand this through a structure of the VR sets, then you understand what your body is. Your body is in a compressor, okay? Now that puts volume, mass, velocity to your pixelation graph. So what you're using is a gravitational pull, and it's come together. It's coming together, and the compressor pressures you inside in the set location. So you have a spin cycle that goes into a direction, a direct and redirect. So as it's going really fast, right, your body is compressing its pixelation graphs. It's creating a higher line of communication. So what that does, it keeps you in the panel. This is your panel right here of your body frame. You got your shoulder correlation, you got your head rotation surface, and see, in confirmation, right? Two correlation lines of track line condition setting in position of direct and redirect. Direct, redirect. So it's 2 panels in frame. So when you're in the VR set, that's what it sounds like. It's a hum. So it's like a hologram. Everything's a hologram. It starts the grounds, powers, and the amperes. But you have to stand the growth. You have to stand the split anomaly or the separation, and you have to stand the recycle in the VR system. You have to come friends, relationship, and collaboration of a partnership when you are in position, walking the surface of the grounds, flying in mechanism like conditions and travels, or anything through navigation and applications through levitation, right? It gets much easier of what's going on with you in travel, okay? Now, in that direct signal, in that position to its program, understanding how your body works in all ways and forms. So we're going to start at the basic ground communication lines, high correlation setting. Okay, so we're going to go track centers. We got one atom line. It says communications of 2 panels and 3 track location, right? Now, this is just an information cycle of grounds, okay? See the sonar, right? Split lines anomaly of 4-track provision. Sonar comes in, right? XC1000 comes above. Says correlation, docking centers. Travels these line rotation cycles and generation. Crosses line signals into center of communication, All right. Now, understanding your data is understanding PROS lines. Data formation screen lines are 3 settings of travel. Points lines at one center, one operational line, surface, and location to your settings of your platforms. Direct calculates lines into 2 directions and a 3-line rotation. Direct line interference and a 4-line signal and communication setting, right? So you got a growing signal, you got a separation cycle, and you got a recycling communication. Solar sail. Okay? And a 6, number 6. So if you understand the process of communication, take the 6 line, correlates the track interference and set position on all levels of high center locations, right? Direct line modification, direct line signals. Setting that communication of sonar is the direct lines of communication lines of center. That process is communication setting that sets all communication setting to its program and 3 lines of grounds, 1, 2, and 3. 4 platforms, communication lines of high center interference, flux capacitor correlates the track interference of a solar sail line rotations. Track provision lines of cycles, opens all signals, and line communication setting and power generation. Directs lines of communication high position to its program. Sets lines of communication line screen location to its setting. Process communication lines, opens up track lines of center communication to its position of its program and set location. A hologram in the VR setting, right? Everything is a hologram, and you just have to really understand how to use it through a T reception. All right. Getting position locations, I know exactly when I see a digital pad, what do I see? Remember, we start with a 4-line screen. Okay, so the center operation line screen location. All right, so it's really interesting when you see the center operation locations, right? Center of operation is everything through center point. So think of the apple that never leaves. Okay, so if the apple never leaves, let's go to the track interference of an apple and direct signals, okay, through the application system, right? Calculation lines. Okay, that's the apple, right? Now, the apple has to have a ground, it has to have a power, and it has to have a magnetic highway. All right, so in that position lines of high center interference, remember, it's position of track lines, it starts here, okay? It comes this way, guys, okay? It doesn't go this way, okay? This is not position lines of interspace. Interspace is coming this way. It's the opposite way. So that's the directions where you guys are going this way now, and this is going back in time. Forward, back in time, okay? So I want to make that very well clear what interspace and spectrum space is in position travel lines and point lines of graph communications. You're coming in positional space is coming to you. Now, once you stand the magnetics and line communication setting, then you stand your grounds, then you stand your powers, and then you stand your magnetic highways and track location. So I want to make it very well clear, okay? Doing this and going this way. No, it's coming this way, coming to you. It's synchronizing to you. Space and time is coming to you. It's coordinating through you. It's signifying through you. You're synchronizing yourself into your computer of you. Okay? It's not this way. It's this way. So that's a direct and redirect. Now, how you communicate with that, you have to really understand how it formulates that. Then it comes to your position of the sun and the moon and all levels of rotation, surface, and track location. Very powerful stuff, how this is all set up, right? Okay. So I'm just showing you how basically you always start in the center point. Okay, the center point, right? All right, so you have to stand the ground lines, the power lines, and set locations. Ground, powers, and opposite, right? So you get ground lines of 1, power lines of 2, and 3 track location. And that's where it starts off, right? Then it comes in this position. Oh, look at that, okay? Then you have the platforms, like that. Now, when I'm drawing this, it's actually this in the opposite direction. You see what I did there? Did you see what I did? So what you have to understand, what is happening with the inner cycles is the outer position of travels and set location. It's really fascinating stuff. So once you understand that, the sun and the moon comes to you in higher formations when you get out of resistance and come into higher correlation settings of your future adaptation, which is already here. Okay? So it's a magnetic force that's coming to you, right? Which is connected to line screens high location of pi. Process communication lines that indicates to a setting of sonar. Track location lines of code wave and location of data. So there it is in track locations. Done. Right? The structure is inside the hologram. See? You see it? Pretty well, eh? See the mechanism lines and screen lines, adaptation lines of surface? Isn't that amazing how you actually see it in all formation screen lines of 4-track location provision? So it's really interesting when you get into that point. And again, you go into colors. Let's go into the red. We'll set up a 3-cycle set location. And we channel off. Now, channel off communication line screen. Let's go through one indication, one pi. That process communication lines, a blue center coordinate, calculates the line setting to center communication, right? Directs calculate the line, split lines of correlation, interactions, right? So you're always working with the growth, the separation, and the recycle. You have to learn how to be a partnership in position to its VR sets, all right? Especially with the species when they're in the holographic communication lines in position of tremor lines in set location to its calculations. Ground centers, okay, powers, and the AppCenter line screen, okay? Sets communication lines. Now we go in track communication lines into cloak and dagger. Sets communication, ground lines, up. So it just comes out. What's coming out, right? It's understanding what you want to communicate. Are you communicating with the grounds, the powers, and the AppCenters? One's growth, line condition setting. So everything is growing. Everything is separating. Everything is recycling. When I say separating, that doesn't mean split lines of anomaly tracking of splitting something in calculations. No, it's just what it's doing. It's reforming, recalculating, remodifying. Okay, it's recycling. But you have to understand the growth of the separation to the recycle. And that's how Earth works in your system of tether in line condition setting to its air, to its water, to its fire. It goes through the same process in the VR sets. So what's standing out in tractions? This, and this. Okay, that's the communication that you're having now. 3 triangulation lines of split lines of anomaly. Okay, so you communicate with this, communicate with this, and you communicate with that. Let's change the graph line. There it is. Let's change the position cycles and correlation lines of tractions. Let's direct the modification lines of pi generation to lines of high side location. Different platform, different communication. Screen lines, adaptation lines of circle and traction. Modification center line and high center location of center attraction. All through location. Right? But you got to see it on a 4-way panel and know exactly what's going on in line communications, right? So we go through red, center core system, split lines of correlations, track lines, outline, rotation, surface, and travel. Now we get a direct lines on line condition setting, cloak and dagger, outline, high cross location system, position lines of communications, 1 settings, track correlation setting, high interference, line connection line lines have 4 split lines of communications. Now what's coming out in track locations? Something's coming out. What's coming out? Right? This is coming out. Right? That's the communication. So how space and time comes to you, again, shift lines anomaly. That's the 50,000 line locations into along with the frames. That's the replication line connecting the high centers. Every time I sit down, pay attention now. Every time I sit down, I'm already in collaboration with partnership with the chair. So I don't need to be modified every time I sit down in the chair, change the code and the frequencies, because it's all identification of a partnership. Because I understand the growth, I understand the separation, and I understand the recycle. Now, if you understand that, then you understand the grounds, your powers, and your AppCenters in the VR system. All right? In track location. All right? All right. Now, getting in that position location to its line screen gets a lot more easier to understand how to use it through its formula, its equation. Now, the direct lines of communication setting opens all signals. Getting communication lines of growth, calculates lines of high center interference of separation, and 2 arrows of indications into recycle. Inside location. That's how it works. Growth, separation, recycle. Okay? So that's what I want you guys to experiment on. Okay, get 3 plants or get 3 glasses of water, keep them at level, all the same level, right? And just put the labels. Okay, love, hate, and ignore. Or you can have 3 different levels of water, all right? Okay, so also again, basically ignore 1, love 1, or yell at 1, right? So you're picking up the sound of frequencies, right? So you get a position lines of attractions and track locations. There's so many ways to look at the growth, the separation, and its recycle. Okay, growth, separation, okay, and recycle. Okay, the grounds, the systematic lines and high location setting in travel. Okay, remembering the cycles and correlations in position muscle memory, guys. There's the triangulation line, and it's set in position. Okay, that's it right there into the VR sets. Okay, so try to get into symbolism and track location. Know what it is in data highways and travel. Same correlation lines on location of growth, arrow indicate going up, split lines on location of two track line provisions, and all calculations. Fibonacci line candidates, arrow line can recycle. Okay, very powerful stuff. Right? Now, once you understand that point line graph, then you come in this position. So it's all about understanding how to use the grounds, how to use the powers of the atmospheres through your arrow indicator scrambles. Scramble communication lines of A, scramble line communication lines of B, or scramble communication lines of C. Now, communication line screens, high adaptation lines of certification settings in blue. It says communication lines of separation or recycling communication setting to travel point graphs and calculation screen location. Okay. Now you get in track locations into white. White lines is communication setting, all levels, line location system. You can cloak and dagger inside or outside, doesn't matter. But what you have to understand is that you're protecting yourself more the more you put yourself in cloak and dagger into the VR sets and set location of travel and calculation. Okay, now it's coming out. That's just the 3 ground standard locations. You can see it coming out, right? That's out, right? That's going like this, and this is just going up. Right? It does what it does. It doesn't do anything else. So understanding that is a balance on its own. But once you understand the position of travel lines and ground lines and positional levels and correlated track interference and separate communications to its cycles and location of line condition setting, recycling, okay, is everything in a triangulation of 3. Now you start with the lines of communication lines and location of 3, how to use 6, and how to use 9 as interaction. Okay? Now you understand the importance. Change communication line side location. This is 9. Making side center locations and high center appearance. Set specific location. This is 3. Line communication setting and position travels. This is lines of communication lines of 6, and this location lines is 3 in track location. Okay, that's how it works in all lines of communication setting. Ground calculation lines, green lines, correlation centers of clock, indication of the grounds of growth, communication of separation, and clocking system location and recycle. Very simple, guys, very simple. So recycling is a relegation bin, and that position its resource to its correlation setting attractions. So you never run out of anything through Intel. You never run anything outline communication setting. But there are 3 things that you keep going in position to its VR system. Is its growth of U and expansion. Okay, expansion and always informs. Okay, expansion, right? But then you also have splits of U and set locations, right? Try to understand and pay attention here. This is how it works in the VR system. Your doppelgangers coming in that track location, splits, okay? Growth, you're growing, you're growing, you're growing, okay? This is you growing, right? So this is basically you splitting, okay? And this is you recycling yourself in travel locations, okay? That's all it is. Grow, split, and recycle, okay? Grounds, powers, atmosphere. So an atmosphere line screen sets lines of flywheel track location line setting location system. Flywheel track location line condition setting to Mother Earth. Sets communication lines of high center interference of father space and set locations. Sets communication, torical fields, there you go, in traction. Okay, so you take this, this, and this, and it stays in the center of operation. Okay, all the time. But you understand the growth, the separation, and it's recycled. Okay, and there's the face. Okay, here's the face, there's the clustrum, there's the shoulders. Okay, so it's really interesting what you guys are all coming into now at a higher level, but you have to understand how to use the communications and settings. Tomorrow's screen, which is already here, line connection high center interference. We're coming in at DX line 1. Okay, X line screen. Okay, 1 position lines of panel. Operation lines indicate 1 centers, 1 operation surface, and track location line condition setting. Position of process is one signal. Process communicates equal lines of linkage of north, east, west, and position cross lines of cell set location. All right. Now, directing line signals is one center on one operation surface and track location line setting. Process communication lines of two track location lines of provision. Center communication lines across lines, high center interference, high coordinates and setting. Process communication line signals, high location system and travel. Okay, all through indications. All right. So you see that now? You see what I just did? Growing, separating. It took me to this. It just wanted to show you on its own. All right, so growing, separating, and recycling. Okay, guys? So it gets much easier to understand location in your settings, right? So you're growing your system and travel, navigating, right? You're separating your anomalies and track location to a system, right? And you're getting into recycle correlation, okay? That's how it's all set up into the VR sets of body traction, right? So that gets you a better understanding of how to use your earth, your air, your water, and your fire, guys, because everything has that. That's building the collaboration of its partnership to really understand the power of force recognition that you can use in all correlations and interactions. So it's really interesting. Once you understand how to use that through your earth, your air, your water, and fire, okay, into the VR sets, okay? Yeah, earth, air, water, and fire. Everything has a line communication setting that travels, but you have to really understand the correlation setting, right? Growing, separating, recycling. Okay, it's very important you understand that, okay? Because that's the position lines that when it comes into the test, all right? So I'm just giving you guys a better understanding where you come in positions, all right? So your Earth location has three sectors, right? 1, 2, and 3. That's how your Earth is split, right? Now, it comes into its modem. This is its modem right here, right? And position location, another modem, and a 3-line communication, another modem, right? 3 modems, right? Track location lines and laser track settings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets communications, cross-line signals, right? Then we cross-line communication 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. DNA tractions and directions, right? Then we have 2 panels and both side location setting of cells. Okay, now understanding the platforms is understanding the core system of ground setting. Process communication lines is a flux, is a 3-track provision lines of cycles generation screens. Okay, communicates line screen locations in a 2-track location line communication setting. Constellation line can do at all levels, but all position location, your spine screen lines adaptations of your highways in track location, all through constellation. See? Boom. Right? So that's how your Earth looks like inside. Platforms, laser line, correlation instructions, high calculation lines, encryption codes, direct lines, modification code screens, direct modification screen interference. It's all track location, right? All right, so platforms are correlation lines and ground lines, sense communications in position. Platform 3, platform 4, platform 6, and platform 8 in travel, in rotation. Okay. Position lines, sun and the moon. It comes in 4-line provisions. Cycles, lines, ground lines of surface and traction. Okay. Direct lines, calculation lines of 4 panels. Sets lines of 6 locations, 7 channels, and operation lines of 0 gravity in set location. Process communication lines of grounds. Now we go according to track interference. Red signals, outside location. Outside platforms of 4 settings, right? Then we go inside correlations, panels outside calculations, right? So the more tricky the geometric operation looks, you have to put more security, right? The reason why you have to do that, because it thickens the line screens, that lines of adaptation lines of surface that you're traveling through. Platforms 1, platforms 2, platforms 3, and platforms 4 in traction, right? Now, getting in that position lines highest interference, you have to understand the manufacturing communication setting, which is your factory relocation system, which is all levels of image structures. Now, that core line interference, you have your 12 gauge calculation and rainbow gauge calculation screen that you can through adaptation line can size center location and position operation line surface. But you have to understand to go through all communication lines, high interference, Vulcan dagger, security, and position location and force fields. 4 track locations. Now, you have to understand, when you're taking things out, that's what you're communicating with. So you make them bolder, okay? You make them stronger, okay? You make them grow. You make them separate. You make them recycle. And it all comes together into one in one cycle. So the tether correlation setting puts past, present, and future in its adaptation of one system, one traction, one location, one clocking, okay? So you have to know exactly how you want to do this and what you want to communicate with and how you want to take these things out. Now we just go to the cloak and dagger. I'm just going to outline cycles, inline rotation, surface, and 4 platforms of communication, right? All right, so I'm going to do add some green in the center core, right? So you have to really understand what you want to communicate with. All right, that took out 2 tractions. So there's 4 line settings, right? Now I'm going to add red dots in center core. This is data processing line screens. It's application. Okay. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add black around the screen line. Adaptation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 graph calculations, screen lines. It's applications and travels. Front lines of communications, direct modification. Right. So what's coming out? These. See how these come out? See? It's a direct and redirect of what you want to communicate with. That's the communication that comes into space and time to you. But you have to stand the space and time you first. You have to stand the inner cycles and the outer cycles comes to you together. There's no separation. But once you understand the waving cycles, waving centers, waving generation, line interference, how to use your finger point correlation lines and tracking system, then you see platforms come out. It's application. See? Now you can see the platforms come out, right? So it has a communication graphs and all line communication setting, but that's how your Earth is set up in traction. Okay, it's very powerful. All right, but I really, really want you guys to get into this set calculations. Grounds, powers, atmospheres, growth, separation, recycle. Grounds, powers, atmospheres. Grounds, powers, atmospheres. Grounds, powers, atmospheres. Okay, everything is ground, everything is power, everything is atmosphere. But you have to understand how to use it through its growth, through its separation, to its recycle. And it comes together in past, present, and future. Okay? All right. How's everybody doing so far in cell locations? Getting a bit of understanding now? Communication through settings and travels, point graph communication, growth, separation, recycle. Okay. Now you have to understand these things, or you're not going to be able to understand the VR system, how it works through information coming to you through traction. How to communicate with a computer, how to communicate with an instruction line, how to communicate with your phone, how to communicate with your digital pad, how to communicate with your car, right? Because that has everything that you have, but has a lot more because it's already in its operation in its VR system. Setting calculation modification, right? What's coming out through frame? This. Right? Out, right? So I can bring it out. Right? So it's direct and redirect, right? But it's got growth, it's got separation, and it's got recycle at the same time, all at once. Now you understand the process, how this all works in your data. Now you understand how to direct and redirect your communication setting in your holographic ground lines and communication setting and travel. Okay? All right. Now, getting into that communication, things are going to get a lot more easier, especially for the team. Species just has to really get into the platforms. How to go through those platforms, how to basically understand how to walk in space, pretty simple. I can vortex, I can time jump, I can time leap and track location. Yay! And then the sun and the moon comes to you. Oh, look at that. Sun and moon's coming to you, right? There you go. Oh, all right. Now you're in position. Good to go, right? So that position lines the centers. Now, once you get into that, then you have to learn how to get into position lines of attractions. Hey, look at that. I'm flying. Yay. Okay, so it's a lot more different from that to this in the angelic school. You have to understand how to ground yourself, right? You have to learn to understand how to ground yourself in the mind, the heart, the soul, and the body, just in the grounds. Under vortex, time leap, time jump. Setting lines of highest interference and flying is very important because when you're flying, you're just getting directions, how to get into the atmospheres. Going this way, going that way, going this way, doing this, doing that, do whatever you want with flying, right? So that's where it starts, right? And also you can go through portals and communication, right through portal, right? Now, once you understand that, then you come into all communication settings, you're good to go through levitation and set location. Levitating, right? Cross-line signal, cross-line dimension, cross-line surface, and track location. Okay? That's a very high line division. But you understand the platforms, the flying mechanisms, and levitation. And once you get in levitation, it's much easier to go through tunnels and portals of high correlation lines of attraction. Okay? It's much easier to travel. And then they can basically hear jump scars, split lines anomaly, in track locations, right? Disappear and reappear in track location. Appear, disappear, reappear, right? Sending that communication, once you understand levitation, things gets much more easier in skylines, sky grade, sky panels, sky correlated levitation surface attractions, right? Box line centers, sets communication line positional travels. This is you and travel, rotations, looking at 3 lines of panel. Sets communication levitation of 1, in position across lines of 2, laser, 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 line condition line, zigzag, platforms 1, 2, and 3, and track location of 5. That's just through a line position location in UFO, guys, right? The track location division. So once you understand that, opens up portal, opens up portal, opens up portal, opens up portal, and opens up portal. Okay? But you have to understand the grounds first. Okay, you got to learn how to ground first. It's a species line correlation. Right? Team's already there, right? The team just has to get more indirect signals how to get in position lines of attractions in position of growth, separation, and recycle. And that's it, we're done. Okay? Oh yeah. So this is what the team needs to get into now. Growth, separation, and recycle. Okay? Powerful stuff, isn't it, when you really understand what's going on, right? All through settings. Okay? See you guys in 5.